Thank you for having me.
I am so glad that you're here because we've got a lot of things to talk about. We just heard Will Zalatoris on that last break, and he pulled out of the Masters because of a recurring back injury, had surgery. So did he come back too soon or what?
Well, I wouldn't say that's necessarily the case. I really believe his swing mechanics are driving his back issues. He's in a lot of extension, Rich, and what that is, the position of the lumbar spine. When we have an exaggerated curvature in this position, you have a lot of compression going through the lumbar spine. The
Right.
discs in particular are getting compressed. And he had a discectomy to remove part of the disc that was putting pressure on a nerve that was giving him symptoms. So ideally, we would see a swing that is in a little bit less extension so that we're not compressing those discs and joints so much. So it's not always necessarily a case of, that you need to rest your back more. Oftentimes you need to change your mechanics and look at other outside activities that may be influencing the position. A lot of times things that we're doing outside of the golf course may be driving a strategy where we're conditioning, say, our muscles in the gym in a way that is creating a compensatory strategy where we will begin to tip the pelvis forward due to the way that we're training our body. And
Okay.
that again contributes to that excessive curvature, which compresses the disc and the joints.
It just seems, when we watch these professional golfers or even the kids in college or high school, I mean, I just see these kids kind of making that turn and then just whipping it through. And some of them look like it's going to hurt the next day only because of how fast they're coming through with such force.
Well, and there are a lot of guys on the tour that are getting away with it because their spine is not in that excessive, extended, compressive position.
Okay.
But when you add that speed with the extension and compression, it's really a recipe for trouble. So again, ideally, it's changing the strategy of how you create your speed is
Okay.
really key in my opinion.
So how do you do that? I mean, is that through your personal trainer? Is that through going to somebody like you and trying to get into a preset, a posture that's different maybe from what they've been doing?
Well, ideally, it's a team approach. So it would be seeing someone in the medical field who's skilled in manual therapy that can actually restore the motion to your joints,
Okay.
restore the soft tissue function, and change the imbalances in your body that have created these positions that are really compromising your spine. So the fitness plays a big role as well because everyone has to kind of be on the same page, because if you go into the gym and you're training your body in a manner where you're recreating those compressive strategies, you're reinforcing those movement patterns that are not ideal in your golf swing. And then also the golf instructor needs to be aware that, if a player is having trouble with their back, that
Right.
there are going to be positions of the spine and the pelvis that are not going to be conducive for the health and the longevity of that player.
And Will pulled out of the Masters. He did have some surgery or corrective procedure that he had done. How soon do you think he'll be back? I mean, I think I read it may be a while.
Yeah, the reports are, his doctors have advised him he's probably going to be out around a year. So
Wow.
very,
Really?
very unfortunate. He had a discectomy, so it's an invasive surgery, and there's, a lot of rehab and recovery anytime that you have a surgery on your spine. So it's going to be, he's got a long road of rehab ahead of him. It's unfortunate, but they elected to perform surgery, and so that's the path he's going to be on for a while now.
Was Will's back similar to kind of what happens with Tiger sometimes prior to his car accident?
Yeah, very similar, and I would say similar really for any professional or amateur golfers that, struggle with their back. As far as, it could be a issue with a disc. You can have the set joint irritations.
Right.
You can have muscle spasms. There are a lot of different symptoms you can have, but in the root of all the problems really is this compressive, extended position of the lumbar spine. Pelvis, when it begins to orient anteriorly, that spine just goes into an excessive curvature. And again, it's multifactorial. It can be reinforced in your golf swing, in the gym, in everyday life. So you really have to take a holistic approach and hopefully have everyone on your team on board to make the changes that are necessary.
And what if we don't have a team? What if we have a guy like you? Then are you able to help us get into a better posture and kind of go through those motions to help?
Yes, I am. I definitely work with a lot of amateur players that may or may not have a swing coach they're working with. And, we will go through the positioning at address and positions we want to avoid in the golf swing, movement patterns. If they have an instructor, I'm always happy to work with them as well via, remote or Zoom. We can communicate, now thanks to technology.
Right.
With Facebook Live, there are a lot of different options.
All right. So we know, and you and I have talked prior to, that the golf swing is very disruptive to the spine, the back. We've just been talking about that. But how can we, as amateur golfers, some of us don't play maybe once a weekend, maybe twice a month, maybe we play more. How can we learn to stretch properly in order to try and avoid these serious back issues?
Yeah, it's really more about decreasing the strategy of tension that we're using to create rotation. So, some activities that are real helpful are just a real simple one, getting on the ground and doing an activity I call lazy rolling. And essentially you're on your side, your knees are bent about 45 degrees, and you're really relaxing into the floor or into the yoga mat or whatever surface you're on, and you're just creating a really subtle roll back and forth. You're creating rotation, and you're learning to do it without creating a lot of tension. So stretching a muscle really isn't effective because the muscle will fight against you. So if you can train your nervous system to relax and create these turns and rotations that we need, not just in the golf swing, but in everyday life. Walking is a rotation. It's a turn, very similar to a golf swing. So shutting down that excessive high threshold tension strategy is really the key.
Okay. So what would you recommend for golfers to do every day? What we just talked about and anything else?
Yeah, that's a great staple exercise activity is the lazy rolling. Activities where, just getting out for a long walk is fantastic because you're getting rotation in your pelvis, in your torso and rib cage. Okay. When you're out walking, some things to think about are really making sure that your arms are actually swinging so that you have rotation through your rib cage. Finding proper contacts through the ground are very important. So a lot of people walk on the outside of their feet. So they create essentially an orientation of the pelvis where the hips are now externally rotated. So it becomes very hard to create the proper rotation through the hip that we need for a correct gait pattern and in the golf swing as well. So thinking about finding the contacts on the inside of your heel, the knuckle of your big toe, very, very good cues. But there are a lot of compensations that can ensue. So ideally, you would have an assessment by a medical professional and find those movement patterns and postures that need attention to and correcting.
Are you able to do that assessment with people that come in to see you?
I am, and I do see clients also as well over Zoom. Ideally, because I'm doing a lot of hands-on
Right.
manual therapy. Ideally, I like to see someone in person, but that's not always feasible. So I'm available definitely for online consults as well.
How can we get to you? Give us your website.
Yeah, the easiest way to find me is on LinkedIn and Facebook, Dr. Brian Paxton.
Gotcha.
I'm currently working on some revision of my website,
Okay.
and so you can find me on LinkedIn and Facebook.
Brian, are there some stretches that could help a little bit to alleviate some of the stress on our bodies that we could do every day or prior to playing golf, especially?
Yeah, definitely. There are a lot of different strategies. Again, I'll be honest with you, I'm not a huge fan of stretching, because when
Hmm.
you go into a stretch position, oftentimes the muscle tightens up and you're stretching really the connective tissues that insert into the bone. You're not really teaching the muscle to relax. So, really, the strategies are learning to move without tension. So, back to the lazy rolling, doing activities where you're rolling on a half foam roller can be very effective to start to orient the muscles into a position where they can start to relax again. It's not about taking a muscle and pulling on it hard, because that muscle fights you. The analogy I often use, Rich, is it's like it's like pulling on the reins of a horse, and you're trying to essentially give it the go at the same time. It just doesn't work. So the research on stretching really shows that we have an increase to the pain tolerance of a stretch, and a very, very short term change in the excursion of range of motion that we lose very quickly.
One of the things that I noticed going to your website and going up on LinkedIn and also on Facebook with you was, how do you identify and how long does it take you to identify the root cause of what's going on with someone?
Yeah, and in an initial evaluation, we can identify those root causes. Uh, we have some, very good testing we can perform to evaluate position of the pelvis, position of the lumbar spine. Very important to run through all the testing and find, the root cause. We don't want to just chase the symptoms. We want to address the symptoms, obviously, but if you just address the symptoms and you're not really looking for the key dominoes that have caused that sequela of symptoms to ensue, then you're just chasing pain and not getting to the root cause.
Now, I've been told over the years that sometimes back issues, especially lower back issues, are a problem with tight hamstrings. Do you agree with that?
I do not. I believe it's more of an issue of, going back to the pelvis, the orientation of the pelvis. When the pelvis is oriented in a forward position, actually the hamstrings, because of their attachments into the ischial tuberosities, the sit bones, the hamstrings actually become in an elongated position.
Okay.
So we actually need to actually begin to strengthen the hamstrings, typically to restore the positioning of the pelvis back to less of an anterior orientation.
Okay. So, in layman's terms, how would you say that to somebody like me that doesn't understand the medical term?
Again, if you just go and you try to stretch your hamstrings and your
Right.
pelvis is tipped forward, Rich, again, it's like you're pulling on the reins of the horse and you're telling it to go at the same time. So you want to get in a position where you can actually get some activity out of your hamstrings. You want to have some muscle activity. You're going to coordinate that with your breathing so that your pelvis is now learning to be in a more stable, oriented position where your hamstrings are not constantly being tugged on from
Right.
both
Okay.
attachment sites.
Okay. So education becomes a big part of what you do with your clients, whether it be online or whether it be in person, but having them be a little bit more informed of what's really going on with their body is a big part of what you do.
I'd say it's probably the biggest part.
Okay.
If you have the wrong strategy and
Right.
couple that with just chasing the symptoms, then typically you're not going to have any long-term resolution, and you'll continue, unfortunately, to irritate different tissues in the body and accelerate degenerative arthritic changes. So we want to go after those root causes so that we really have longevity to play the game of golf and have
Gotcha.
good quality of life moving forward.
Yeah, well, good quality of life is always important, whether you're young or you're old. But we got to take a quick break. Brian, we'll be right back with Dr. Brian Paxton talking about some issues with our backs and what we might be able to do to help that. We'll be right back after this on the Back Nine Boys Golf Podcast.
The Midday Sports Zone on Sports Radio 103.7, the Superstations.
What do you call the end piece of the loaf bread?
The heel.
The heel.
Did you hear something different?
Matt just texted me. I texted him, hey, check and make sure there's some bread out. And he's like, no, there's not. Do you want me to take some out? And I said, yeah. And he said, is the butt piece okay? I've known this kid since the day he was born.
Where did he get that
I have
from?
never taught him to call that the butt piece.
I've never heard that before.
So I'm like, where did you learn butt piece? You didn't learn that from me. It's the stupid town we live in, I guess. I don't know where he learned that from and his friends. That's what the text says, butt piece, okay? Like, yeah, it's the heel. Apparently he doesn't like the butt piece.
Well, I wouldn't eat it if it was called the butt piece.
Well, there's some nice butts out there.
Now I want a sandwich.
The Midday Sports Zone, weekday mornings at 11 on Sports Radio 103.7.
The Club Car Onward Golf Car is crafted to fit your every adventure. Whether it's a morning coffee run, a quick spin around the neighborhood, or a chance to pop out and visit with friends nearby. With the Club Car Onward, your everyday drive becomes a moment to remember. Make your Onward truly unique with hundreds of combinations of colors, seats, wheels, power options, and more to choose from. Build yours today at clubcar.com. Live Onward.
Hi, I'm Clark Spratlin, General Manager, Director of Golf here at Sea Palms Resort. I'd like to invite you to enjoy Sea Palms for the club experience. That includes our 18-hole championship golf course, driving range, and our premier members-only practice facility, The Miracle. Our golf shop features a variety of premier brands for ladies and gentlemen, plus junior golfers. You can also enjoy our fitness facility, 2 pools, and clay tennis courts. Please allow our PGA Golf professional staff to help guide you on your golf journey. Please visit our website, theclub@seapalms.com, for more information. Please come see us.
Hey, this is Jim Furyk from the PGA Tour, and you're listening to the Back Nine Boys Golf Show.
And welcome back. I'm Rich Stiles, and we're with Dr. Brian Paxton, who can be found on his Facebook or LinkedIn page. Brian, golfers, since the emergence of Tiger and working out, I mean, you go to these college tournaments, professional tournaments, Corn Ferry, whatever, everybody looks the same. I mean, they're either short and skinny or they're tall and skinny. They're stronger than heck. Can we get too strong?
Well, it's not an issue of really getting too strong. It's what are the strategies we use in the gym to build strength? So if we're using strategies where we're compressing joints together to create strength, then we're robbing ourselves of mobility and range of motion. We then begin to have to use compensatory strategies to create rotational patterns and create speed in the golf swing. So that becomes an issue because now we have compressive forces going through joints. We can't distribute forces through the body, so we have focal areas that essentially, they take on a lot of stress and cause injury.
All right. Can you help me or other golfers increase our flexibility?
Yes, I can. So, if you're working out in the gym, a good general principle is you want to weight your program more towards unilateral exercises. And what I mean, to give you an example, a bilateral exercise would be for the upper body, a bench press.
Okay.
A unilateral exercise would be a one arm cable press. So whenever you use one arm, one extremity to create motion and build strength, you're actually inducing rotation through the body more effectively. So that is much less compressive, Rich, than these bilateral exercises that we're seeing that really compress the joints together.
And how long, and I know we're in this convenient society at this point, how long does it take to help someone, even as we get older, increase flexibility?
Well, you can increase flexibility significantly, really within one session of training if you have the right strategies and approach.
That's the key, right strategy and the right approach. I mean, that's the big key.
It is because unfortunately, I'll give you an example. I mean, injury rates on the PGA Tour, they're just going up every year.
Yeah.
Over the decades, they're going up. And I have to attribute it to, what's going on. A lot of it in the gym is very, very compressive in nature to the joints of the body. And, that basically forces the golfer to create compensatory movement patterns that are not conducive for musculoskeletal health and longevity.
All right, we've got about a minute left. Are we sitting wrong? Sometimes I think I slouch, back in the chair, or sometimes I think I sit too far forward. But in general, are we sitting wrong when we're sitting at home or in the car or wherever?
Not necessarily. The most important strategy with sitting is change positions often, Rich. You don't want to stay in one position. So oftentimes I'll say take a motion break every 15 minutes if you're sitting. But if you're sitting and stuck in a position, you want to constantly move around, change positions. When we load one area of the body for a prolonged period of time, we will stress that area. So changing positions is the key.
Gotcha. Well, I've learned a lot, as I always do when I talk with you, which we should talk more often, because I've already decided I've got to call you and come in and see you as soon as I can. So thank you for being with us and all this information.
Thanks for having me on the show again, Rich.
It's always a pleasure. And we'll